Hello, and thanks for joining us for another episode of The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America, where each episode we bring you a fresh and insightful interview featuring one of the film industry's top directors, conducted by one of their peers. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're enjoying The Director's Cut, please take a moment to rate and review us on iTunes or like us on SoundCloud. We love hearing your feedback. This episode takes us behind the scenes of director Craig Gillespie's new darkly comic biopic, I, Tonya. Based on unbelievable but true events, the film follows figure skater Tonya Harding as she goes from being the first American woman to complete a triple axel in competition to a criminal suspect and pariah. In an infamous chapter in American sports history, her ex-husband orchestrates an attack on fellow Olympic competitor Nancy Kerrigan at the National Figure Skating Championship in 1994. In addition to I, Tonya, Mr. Gillespie's credits include the feature films $1 Million Arm, Fright Night, Lars and the Real Girl, and Mr. Woodcock, and the pilot episodes of the series My Generation and United States of Terra. He is a 4-time DGA Award nominee for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Commercials and received the DGA Award for his 2006 commercials for AmeriQuest and Altoids. Following a recent screening of the film at the DGA Theater in New York, Mr. Gillespie spoke with director Tom McCarthy about filming I, Tonya. During their conversation, Mr. Gillespie discusses the challenge of finding the correct tone given the domestic violence in the story, the film's key improvisational moments, and how he achieved soaring Steadicam shots while on an ice skating rink.
Thanks for coming out tonight on a cold Wednesday night. We're just going to jump right in. I'll chat a bit with my friend Craig here about his wonderful movie, and then I'll open it up to any questions that you have. We just had a drink, and I was like holding back on things I've wanted to ask him. But that said,
I could feel it.
Yeah, that said, I've known Craig for a while. We collaborated on $1 Million Arm many years ago, and I remember when this script came across his desk. And he happened to be in New York, and we were chatting about it. And he said, you know, he just come off doing a big movie for Disney. He's like, I feel like there's something about this. I just want to like grab it and run with it. And at our drink next door, he said, you know, I don't know if you know about Craig, but he shoots about 1.2 billion commercials a year somehow, and I don't know how he does it. And he said, you know, I just want to like get it, and I don't want to think, and I just want to like make it. And he was sort of, the way he was talking about it sounded like maybe he was just going to throw it away, but really what it meant was he just wanted to kind of explode it. And I think that's exactly what he did with this movie. He went with his gut and his instinct and his vision. And for me, when I looked at the running time today as I was coming to the theater, I'm like, this movie's 2 hours? For me, it flew. I just was so with the characters, with the story, with the rhythm and the music of the movie that it took me away. And I'm really thrilled for you and excited to be here to talk about it. So let's talk about that. You get this movie, and it's so different than, you know, the couple of pictures you did before. Like, what was your first thought?
It's actually, I remember I was actually coming back from a commercial set, and my agent called, and he goes, hey, I got this movie about Tonya Harding. And he took it, just in the breath that he took, I went through like 7 different thoughts of like, I'm not looking to do another sports biopic. No offense to our movie that we did, but we had done a sports biopic, and then I did another biopic, and it seemed so long ago. And I was like, I don't, you know. And then he finished the sentence with Margot Robbie playing Tonya Harding, and I was like, that is the craziest combination. And I love Margot's work. I was really familiar with it, and her dance that she can do of drama and comedy is something that I love to work with, and I was hoping that maybe the script would reflect that. And then I read the script, and it was the craziest, wildest ride that I've ever read. And it didn't, I couldn't find anything to compare it to. It was, I kept trying to find other movies to look at, and obviously To Die For was one of the first things I thought of, that, you know, Nicole Kidman and Gus Van Sant, that has the narration in the interviews with them, but it's very linear, and they're all telling the same, like building on the same story. And this idea of these contradictory viewpoints that never get resolved, and then on top of that, they're talking to each other and talking to the audience, and it was just and there was a lot of other voiceover going on, and there was 256 scenes in 110 pages. And I was actually worried whether it could hold that because the energy of it was so much. But I actually then complicated it even more by adding breaking the fourth wall, which wasn't in the script, and decided to bring that in as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of amazing. When I try to think about the movie logically, it shouldn't work. It shouldn't hold together. It shouldn't make sense. But it is so. It's just so compelling and it's so grabbing, and it goes beyond just the rip from the headline story. It's something about watching the sort of Rashomon effect of so many unreliable narrators telling the same story and not knowing where this comes into play, right? Where we're landing, and there's something that seems so. I know when you made this movie, you didn't know we were going to be right where we are at this point in time, right? This crazy up world that we're living in, but there's something that feels so current about this movie because it's factless, right? It's sort of like about opinion, and
it's fake facts.
It's fake facts, but it's about opinion and point of view in a really relevant and important and interesting way.
And what I loved about what I loved about it is we're making it be audience participation. Like, you get to take all of this information and then decide what you think. It's almost more in a documentarian way. Like, I'd think about The Jinx, and when you'd watch that, and you'd really be leaning in and be like, is he lying right now, or is he telling the truth? And you have to go with your own instincts to decipher that. So it was bizarre in these interviews that we would have to talk to Margot and be like, how much are you lying right now when you talk to us? She'd have to walk that nuance to give you those signals. But that was really interesting in terms of all those unreliable narratives. But like, more thematically, what I really enjoyed was the opportunity that we can take somebody in our society that is like basically a poster child for the villain, like in America, and she's been a punchline. And Obama 2 years ago tweeted he was going to go Tonya Harding on somebody. 23 years later, it's just shocking, like just the impact that she's had. And take this idea that, and I'm sure, like, when people came in here, you're prejudiced. You think, I'm not going to have empathy for this person, and then we get to show her as a human being and all the nuances of her life, and that that informed where she ended up and the choices that she made with all the emotional and physical abuse. And I'm not trying to condone what she did, but just understand it. And in a way, it makes you be culpable. And we're holding a mirror up to ourselves. And I want you to feel a little guilty about being so judgmental, which I feel is a commentary on how we are now. Like, they started off this 24-hour news cycle, started with them and CNN and everybody just craving for like, headlines. And back then there was a narrative that they supplied us, but now there's so many outlets for it, but we just consume it like at this rapid pace, and you go through all these lives and you churn through them. So I liked, it's commentary on the media, but it's also a commentary on us consuming it.
Right. And so you get the script. I know you as a director, you're someone who likes to dig in on the script. How much of that did you do with the screenwriter, with your creative team, or did you just kind of take it at face value? Did you do? You mentioned sort of breaking the fourth wall in those moments, which I assumed were mentioned in the script, because of how seamless they are and how much they make sense and how much they sort of weave into your opening comment about how unreliable this will be in some ways. So, how much work did you do with the writer?
I actually had to pitch myself, obviously, which we always do as directors for this film, but. Margot Robbie was already on as a producer with her company in her first year, and Allison Janney, Stephen Rogers wrote this script on spec, and basically just quickly, he saw the 30/30 documentary, went and tracked down Tonya Harding. He called her up, flew up to Poland on his own dime, interviewed her for 2 days, got this crazy story, then thought, all right, I'm going to go find Jeff Gillespie, and they haven't spoken in 25 years. Found Jeff Gillespie, interviewed him, and they were so contradictory in their stories that was his into this movie. So that's what started it all. So I had to go in and pitch all of them, my idea. And I met them all separately. Brian Unclus is the producer, and then he's like, all right, now I want you to meet Stephen. I sat down with Stephen for 3 hours. That went well. And he's like, all right, now you need to meet Margot. And I sat down with Margot, and she basically asked 2 questions, and I thought they were the best questions, which is the first one was the tone. Like, everybody talks about tone, and it's such an intangible thing, and how do you do tone? And then, which is the long answer, which we might get into, and the second question was, how are you going to handle the violence? And with the violence, they said, I think we need to be brutally honest. I think we need to show all of it and not hold back, because this informs us on the way she behaves and the way she sees the world, and the way that just that armor that you see on her, and just the way that she rationalizes everything is from this upbringing and her relationship with Jeff. As we were working on that, and particularly the violence that starts in the beginning of the movie, you'd watch a lot of documentaries. There's so much footage on Tonya out there. From the age of 15, there's this amazing documentary that a Yale student did, where you really see like behind the curtain, and that's actually where that footage is from her mother with the bird and the fur coat is from this Yale documentary. And you just see how numb she is to the violence. She talks about how her mother would hit her and she'd just shrug it off, and you could already see that process happening. So intellectually, I thought if we have her break the fourth wall when this is happening, it reinforces that she's disconnected from the scene and like numb to the violence, that she can step out of it and talk to us. So that's where that idea came from. And then because I had it there, I felt like just to balance it in the film, we needed it in other places. So then we started just building upon that. And so the first time that Sebastian breaks the fourth wall is when the film really starts to become his narrative, like in the bar. That's the first time he talks to us. And then we got to play a lot. So there was a lot of like playing with that, adding to the script in that way. Interestingly, because there was so much talking heads in the script, and I felt it could really kill the momentum of it. So I designed the whole movie where we could literally have no interviews if we wanted. Like I shot footage that this could all be voiceover going through this, and we designed it that way as so you could just punch in for a line in the interview and then keep this fluid camera work going. And then also, there was no music in the script, and I really, like, the energy and the chaos of her life, and, being a big Scorsese fan and the way that he can juxtapose music to violence and put it in a different place, I really wanted, and David O. Russell's stuff, I really wanted to have a lot of music in this. So I sat with my DP, Nicholas Kravitz-Kantanis, who's Belgium, and we shot-listed this whole film, looking, like, every time we'd be like, all right, here's an opportunity for music, and we'd design the movement of that. So we did a lot of that kind of stuff. And then once we got into the edit with Tatiana Regal, who it's my 5th film with her, we did Lars and the Real Girl and have worked since then together, we started really stripping it away. We ended up taking about 30 minutes out of the film, but a lot of that was making the second half of the film, the narrative, ambiguous. So the audience starts to just take in this information because you start to go along for the ride and not question it. And whose narrative are we actually hearing in the second half? And, so it was clearer for a little while in the edit, and you'd know, like, all right, this is Jeff's point of view and this is Tonya's. And then we kept stripping away who we were listening to, and you actually start to forget. But a lot of it is Jeff's point of view for the second half of the movie.
So I want to go. I know Tatiana, wonderful editor, but she's probably she was the only constant on this. This is a very you mentioned this is a really new crew for you, which I think, from my perspective, seemed to feed you in so many ways. I think that can be really liberating for a director. What was that experience like? How did that feed into this sort of the process and energy of this film?
I do a lot of commercials, and there's like 5 guys that I work with a lot in commercials. All of them were doing movies, like when this happened. And so I was suddenly in a place where I've got to find a DP that I haven't worked with, which is a scary proposition with a film. And I had seen Nicholas's work. He did Bullhead, which is a beautiful Belgium film, and he did The Drop and 999, and there's like another 10 movies he did in Europe. He's such an interesting style, and he mixes so many different palettes. And we talked on the phone, and everything we talked about was tone and the humor and the drama in the movie had such a similar sensibility, which was great. And then we really connected on that. We actually didn't talk much about what we were going to do with the camera. It was all just about the tone of the film. So I booked him, and when he finally met in person, he's like, I've never done a movie with somebody I don't have a relationship with before. And I was like, well, I kind of haven't either. We'll see what happens. And we got along great. There was so many moments in this movie. And then I went with Jade Healy, who I hadn't worked with, that my line producer recommended, production designer. this movie was incredibly, as you probably heard, ambitious, because we ended up shooting more scenes because I had to add in so many shots for the music and so it was probably something like 280 scenes we did, and it was 31 days. And Margot was amazing. That, the pressure on an actor to have to be doing 8 or 9 scenes a day and wig changes, and she was amazing. But everybody, it's like from my AD, Kim Winters, who has done like Edge of Tomorrow and Braveheart and like some massive movies, but he loved like being in the trenches on this and getting as much as we could, and it's such a puzzle to figure out every day. And Jennifer Johnson, who was our wardrobe person, there was 108 wardrobe changes for Margot. Forget the rest of the movie. It was like, it's 5 different, like, 2 Olympics and 3 other, like, she got down to all of Lillehammer and what everybody was wearing back then, and everybody just dived like full throttle in, and it was amazing. So, but they were all people I hadn't worked with before, which was shocking.
I gotta say, you mentioned the 2 Olympics, and it's like, it's amazing, right? Because for me, the movie has such scope, but it's still so intimate. It's so true to the world and the characters, and you feel like you're experiencing that scope through those characters, so it never goes out of its way for me to feel sort of disproportionately large or epic, but it feels true to their experience, and I feel in that way sort of the ride is just so authentic for me. The whole way through, I'm like, oh, this is how it happened, this is how it happened. Even the incident, it's like, oh my God, that's totally, and those 2 actors, forget about it. Those guys should have their own series, I think, for sure. But like, I want to go back to Margot a minute, because we shouldn't, this is, it seemed in large part to be a real passion project for an actress who undoubtedly has a lot of opportunity. What was that collaboration with? How involved did you stay? Did you guys continue to collaborate through the process? Or once you hit production, did she kind of like, and I imagine by necessity you had to on some level, but drop into her role as actress? How did she stay involved?
It's funny. It's like, you hope, as a director, I think a lot of times the actor's prep is very personal to them, and you don't know. They all have a different process on how they work, and a lot of times you're not involved in that as a director. It's like, obviously there's rehearsals and things like that we do, but she had a 2-pronged situation going on here. One, she had to learn how to skate. She really wanted to skate as much as she could in this film, so she started 5 months before we started shooting with a trainer 5 days a week, like 3 hours a day. Working, 5 months before, I went through all of Tonya's skating from 86 to 94, and she storyboarded all of those sequences. And then I sent it to Margot and our skating coach, Sarah Karahara, and she had 2 other skaters, professional skaters, and they just worked on all of those pieces for 5 months. So Margot's got that going on. Then she's having to learn to be Tonya Harding. I think when you have such an iconic figure, the audience can be really critical of, because we know Tonya's mannerisms and her speech patterns and her physicality. So it's a real burden, I think, as an actor to have to get into that mindset and the body language and working with like physical coaches and dialect coaches. The amount of prep that she did, I fully didn't appreciate until she came in on the set and she sat down for that interview, and she just turned into Tonya Harding. And it was staggering, but then what's even more staggering is I could go off script with her. And sometimes when you're doing that with an actor, when they're having to do an accent, and you can't veer too far from the script. But there was a lot of improvising on this movie, and a lot of spontaneity, and a lot of reactive stuff going on between the characters. And she could roll with anything. It's like that it really became like this free form. It's that one scene when she's in the courtroom, it was a crazy day for us, and of course we shot in a real courtroom, and of course there was a real court case going on that went an hour over, and the whole crew's sitting outside waiting. And so we're like behind, and we're trying to figure out our call times, and I'm talking to Margot about it, and then suddenly the AD comes over, he goes, "We're ready," and I'm like, "Oh, all right, great." So, and this is our second last day, so it's a very quick shorthand at this point. And I'm like, great, so we're starting on the judge, we're going to come over, and then you'll be hearing the verdict, and we'll say on you as you do your dialogue. And I ran over to the monitor, and I actually didn't have the script in front of me, so I'd forgotten exactly like how much it was. I called action, and she started that performance, and I'm watching it, I'm just riveted by it, and she's so in the moment. And after about like 4 sentences, I'm like, I don't think there's any script left here. But she was so present that I just didn't call cut. And she went for another 2 minutes, which was what ends up in the movie there. Like, send me send me to jail and I can still skate. It's like not in the script. And she just kept building on it and building on it.
Wow.
And that was like the zone that she was in. It was amazing. And I took it for granted in a way, not in the sense of, I'm in awe of it, but I just knew she'd be able to deliver every time we had a scene. There's another scene at the Mirror, and which is how I love the collaboration on the set. And this was Nicholas, the DP, came over, crazy day, running around, and we're trying to shoot this scene at the Mirror when she's getting ready, and Nicholas just leans over and goes, "Why don't you ask her to maybe put on all her makeup and then get her game face on?" And so I run over, I'm like, "Can you try that?" And she's like, "Yep." And one take. And
Great
I'm
scene.
like, "Got it, great, thanks, let's go." And you got to throw another wig on and get on the ice and do a routine. And she was just like that the whole time. It's like all actors have different processes, but she has that amazing ability that she can be talking about something and you can call action, and she's that person.
I'll take some questions from out here in just a minute if you have some that I start thinking. But before I do, I want to be remiss not to talk about some of those amazing skating sequences, which I think are just stunning. And full disclosure, my wife is a former competitive figure skater. And I brought her to an early cut of Craig's movie, and she's like, "Holy shit. He totally got it right." And not just the skating, but the world around it, the instructors, the refs, or they called
Judges.
the judges, all that. See, I was not a figure skater. But, she's just like, it's just the world she lived in, and she walked out there, it's like, oh my God, did he capture that world? But let's talk about the skating sequences for a minute. I mean, some of the camera work there is very beautiful. I know you shot on film, which makes it seem almost more difficult with some of the technical things you were pulling off.
It is more difficult.
Yeah. Can you speak to that a little bit?
We really wanted to shoot on film for this, Nicholas and I. Puts you in the period, and for all of the, not so much for the skating, it was more complicated, but for all the energy with them as a couple and in their world, we talked about almost the camera can't keep up with them. And there's no marks. We didn't want to have marks, and I like the idea that we can go out of focus at moments, and it feels more immediate. And I think on film, that can look beautiful. Digitally, when you go out of focus, it's a little jarring. So that was a big point for us for wanting to do film. So, but when you get to the ice, you can't work off a monitor with film. So we've got our focus puller with these massive sequences where he's walking around on the ice and they're 50 yards from him, and he's trying to guess the focus, and we won't know till the next day if we've got it all, because these were some long takes that we were doing. As we were trying to figure out, there's definitely styles to all the different pieces. Like the first one's very aggressive, the ZZ Top thing, because she was young and messy, and we wanted it to be that way. And then the triple is when she's at her peak, so it's more precise with the camera moves. And then the last, Lillehammer, she's got the whole world bearing down on her, and I just wanted the camera on her face, like with her, for like the whole sequence. But so I started without knowing how we were going to do it, and then we started having all these conversations of what are we going to do? Is it going to be like a drone? Is it going to be a guy on a sled with a Movi camera with a remote head? And we're discussing it with our Steadicam operator, who was in Los Angeles at the time, and we're prepping in Atlanta. And he goes, "Hey guys, by the way, I can skate." And I was like, "Yeah, all right." And you can horseback ride and fence and probably do a whole bunch of stuff. And he's like, "No, I'll shoot something this weekend."
You thought he was just sharing his hobbies with you at the time?
Yeah, you could get out there and maybe follow her a little bit. And so he's like, "I'll shoot something this weekend and I'll send it out to you." And he had a friend who was a figure skater, and he went out and did this crazy 3-minute, choreographed dance with her and sent it back. And I'm like, that's what we're doing. So most of this is our Steadicam operator, Dana Morris, who's an amazing skater, and he would get up to, we knew the pieces we would need. So the skater would come in to do those couple of tricks, or Margot sometimes, and he'd come flying in at, get up to speed and then lock in, and he'd be holding a camera and either backwards or forwards, just start the whole move and just do this dance with them. So on the day, we would shoot those sequences, none of them were more than a day. Some of them were like a half a day for the whole, because it was such a quick way to work. And I knew with our schedule, we didn't have the luxury of making it too complicated.
So did you spend a lot of the morning rehearsing, or how'd you?
No, it's 5 months of prep for them. So the skater would come out and we'd just chip away at it. It's here's the first piece, the opening, and then we're going to cut here. And Dana would come in and shoot it and try it, and then it's like, and then the next take it'd be like, hey, maybe I'll come around this way and land on her face here, and I'm like, great, do that, and then we'd shoot the next piece and the next piece.
Did you board?
Yeah, it was all boarded, but then he was so fluid that we let it go further. But it was pretty much each cut was where it was in the boards, but what happened between those cuts would vary.
Came out great. Any questions out here?
Yeah, there's actually 120 effect shots and 60 head replacements. So, yeah, 8 Effects, which is a commercial company that I work with, wanted to get into features, so they literally gave us an incredible deal on it. And of course, it ended up being twice as many shots as they bid. So.
And now they're out of business.
Yes.
You've drove them
they're
out
still
of business.
alive, but they did an amazing job. And it's like you deal with like 100 extras, and then now these days it's all computer-generated crowds, and you can program them to be standing and clapping, and you have to know the distance you got to be away from them for it to be forgiving, but it really works.
Someone else here had a question? Yeah. Oh, I'm supposed to repeat the question. Sorry. She said, have you met Tonya, and what has been her reaction to this?
Margot and I went up and met her 2 weeks before shooting the film. And I was nervous about that. I didn't know how she would be. She'd read the script, but she was not allowed to have any input on it. To try and be objective, but she was so kind. It was amazing to think like that. She's had sort of been like abused in the press for 25 years, and we're about to bring this whole story up again. I didn't know how protective she would be, or miserable about it, basically. And she was so kind and trusting. And I did try to show her that I was going to honor what her version of things is, and that's what she just wanted to get her version out there. Then we showed her the movie 2 weeks before Toronto. We wanted to give her space, and so we sent somebody up there and rented a theater for her and her husband. She said there were things in it she didn't agree with, which I think is probably whatever Jeff was saying. And but she was overall happy. And then last night we had a premiere in Los Angeles, and she got to come. And her husband mentioned to me how happy he was with what's happened.
He asked what the budget was, and was there any challenge in the funding, which at this point is a rhetorical question in the film industry.
It was $10 million to shoot it, and then the big challenge was the music, because I got really greedy and decided I wanted to, all of this music, but not just music. I was insisting on Dire Straits and Fleetwood Mac and Foreigner and
Laura Branigan.
Laura Branigan, and I felt emphatic that we really needed that music. The movie was designed around it, and so to their credit, they actually ended up coming up with the money for it. But it ended up getting closer to 11.
She said she really loved Allison's performance as the mother, and how did she develop that character? And she did have an opportunity to meet the actual mother.
It's Tonya didn't know where her mother was when Stephen, the writer, met with her. She didn't actually know if she was still alive. So we didn't have any contact with her. Pretty much what Allison got, it's funny, Stephen likes to say that Jeff and Tonya agreed on nothing except Lavana. And so it's a lot of their versions of who she was, and then that documentary from when, with the bird, then you really get a sense of her cadence and her attitude and her mannerisms in that documentary, which I think Allison took a lot from. And I mean, the amazing thing with Allison Janney as an actor is it's the most vile stuff that she's doing and saying. It's just the most heinous, and somehow she makes us like her. And there's this empathy, and you can feel the pain whenever she's talking. It's funny as it is, you can feel she's almost regretting it as soon as she's saying it. You see that, I feel like you see that struggle in her, and that's her talent as an actor.
Yeah, it's really, that completely operates. I don't know if we like her, but we...
you like to hate her.
We don't want her to be our mommy, but 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 it feels incredibly human and honest, and you can see and feel that struggle. I'm curious on that note. Did each of the actors have an opportunity to talk to their counterparts? Like, how did that play out?
Well, Margot obviously did, and then Sebastian.
How much time did they spend together, Margot and Tonya?
Not that much. It's like there's so much footage on Tonya. I mean, more than any of the other characters, obviously. So Margot really did her work with that, and she would listen to the audio and really get it all down. And then she wanted to do all of that first before she met Tonya, and just have a conversation with her and explain to her that she's playing a character. This is her interpretation. It's not it's not a faithful rendition of Tonya. So that was for her. For Sebastian, he really wanted to meet Jeff, because there's not that much footage of Jeff, and generally it's him or after the incident being interviewed, where it's not an honest portrayal. He's like, you can feel like he's saying the right thing or trying to play, the camera. So he wanted to see who he really was, when the camera wasn't on. So he went and had hung out with him for about 3 hours and had dinner with him, which I think he found invaluable.
Anybody else meet their...
No, Sean's character tragically has passed away like 10 years ago.
It's a great performance, by the way. Amazing.
And Bobby's character is a compilation of a bunch of different journalists. But there was a journalist we found in a documentary who literally said he slashed those tires and called a tow truck. And then for Julianne Nicholson's character, Diane, she didn't want to meet.
Great performance, also great actress. Any other questions?
Yeah, it's something, I really wanted to be able to have us empathize with Tonya. And so actually before Lilyhammer, I consciously started stripping all of the other characters away. By the time we get into that sequence with the chain, you really lose all the other interviews, and it just becomes about Tonya, because I really wanted to feel the pressure just building on her and the isolation that she had, that there was nobody around to protect her. So it does very much go into that dive. So by the time we get to Lilyhammer, I mean, it honestly was kind of a goal for me that, obviously her as the villain, but also we all remember that iconic moment when she was at the Olympics and she comes over and she's crying and she puts her skate up, and we all laughed about it and we all ridiculed it. And I thought if we could actually make that a poignant moment in the movie, that would be quite a feat. And I thought, with knowing her history and that we were going to go through that journey, it was possible.
Well, my final question on that point was like I think you get a script like this, and it's a beautiful script, real credit to the writer, but it's also an incredibly challenging just project and film on the whole, just a picture that could have gone in so many directions. Looking back now, do you recall like what, I always feel like I have a couple of like real fears going into a movie, like we got to land this has to work, or I don't know how I'm going to do this, or this is the big challenge. For this particular film, what was it for you?
It's... Well, it was actually casting Jeff Gillespie, and it took us about 4 months to figure that out. I came on board, there was Margot and Allison, but because of the violence in their relationship and trying to figure out that cycle and why they would stay together and why there was this destructive relationship that we could be engaged in, trying to find an actor that could do that dance was incredibly difficult. And I was completely stressed about that. We went through a lot of auditions. We had about 10 actors come in and read with Margot for chemistry. And there wasn't, it was amazing. It got very dark very quickly. And there was none of that duality going on. And then Sebastian came along at Mary Vanou's office, and I got handed the headshot. And I wasn't familiar that much with Sebastian's work, other than obviously, I looked at him like the guy from Captain America, and she's like, trust me. And she'd seen him over the years, and he came in and he had the mustache and the turtleneck, and he just gave this incredibly layered performance that just blew me away. And so then we had Margot come and audition with him, and there's a moment, and I know it's obviously a very dark scene, but it was always like, how are we going to handle this violence? And it was really, because it's very much, a lot of times it becomes premeditated, and it gets very scary. And it's not trying to condone it, it's just trying to understand, because they stayed in this relationship, and so why do they keep coming back, and what is there about it? So he was in the middle of this scene with the cops pulling them over, and there's a line in the script where he goes, if you fucking say anything, I'll kill you. And then in the audition, he leaned over and he kissed her and said, "I love you." And it was not scripted. And it was such a crazy dichotomy, playing those different emotions. And disturbing. And you just saw like how schizophrenic his emotions were and how pained he was. And it just, I knew right then that he could deliver for us.
It's a good place to stop. I mean, I think you so well captured the heart and humor and pain and Americanness of this great story. Congratulations, you, my friend. I'm very happy. Craig Gillespie.
Thank you, Tom.
Well done.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. If you'd like to hear more from Director Tom McCarthy, check out Episode 8, where Mr. McCarthy discusses his DGA Award-nominated film Spotlight with director Jonathan Levine. You can find past episodes of the Director's Cut wherever you listen to podcasts. Be sure to click subscribe so you won't miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please like, share, and leave us a review. We'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks again for listening, and have a great week. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.